The following program is brought to you by Podcast One Sportsnet.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like a whole new person.
Disclaimer, you will not become a whole new person. This is impossible. You might be able to join a gym or diet program, buy a new wardrobe, get hair implants, but your DNA and physical form will remain the same. Geico waives any and all liability if you attempt to become a new person, except a cyborg. If you choose to become a half-human, half-cybernetic organism with lasers for eyes, the Geico legal team would be cool with that, because, quote, laser eyes are pretty sweet. Pew, 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 end quote.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
This episode of the Steve Austin Show is sponsored in part by DDP Yoga. Hey, man, working hundreds of matches over the years, hell, thousands of years, who am I kidding? Ain't no surprise my body's been beaten to death. My buddy Diamond Dallas Page knows all about the wear and tear the ring takes on your body, and his DDP Yoga fitness system was specifically designed to burn fat, reduce pain, and heal up from injuries, breaking up all that scar tissue. And just check out this list of folks he's helped out with his program. Scott Hall, Goldust, Chris Jericho, Edge, Jake Roberts, AJ Styles, Drew McIntyre, NXT's Bobby Fish, Tony Schiavone, and yours truly, Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's right. Y'all heard I took the DDP Yoga plunge, and I'm digging it. And Dallas is so positive that you'll absolutely love the DDPY program and using the DDPY app. He's doing something he ain't never done before. He's going to give you 7 days for you to try it out. That's a week to try the program, explore the app. There's a lot going on there, and own your life, and it's completely free. There's a lot of info in this app. There's a lot of great content. All the workouts, regimens, diet tips, motivation supplied by Diamond Dallas Page. This app is badass. DDP Yoga can work for all ages, all weights, all fitness levels. It's a kick-ass cardio workout that will dramatically increase your flexibility and strengthen your core like never before, all with minimal joint impact. I can appreciate that, and that's a shoot. Just for listeners of the Steve Austin Show, you can save 20% off an annual membership for the DDP Yoga Now app, which now features DDPY Rebuild. Just go to ddpyoga.com/Austin to get started. Also, Dallas will be at the Corpus Christi Comic-Con June 23rd and 24th, signing autographs and taking pictures. And check this out. The 8th annual DDP Yoga Retreat is coming at you July 7th through July 12th at the El Dorado Resort in the Riviera Maya, Mexico. That's 6 days and 6 nights in Cancun to enjoy DDP Yoga with an amazing backdrop in paradise. Spaces are filling up. Go to ddpretreat.com for pricing and all the details.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production. From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah! Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, everybody, welcome to Steve Austin Show. I am coming to you from the mean streets of Los Angeles, California today. I'm sitting here at 316 Gimmick Street. That's right, I'm at my crib fixing to walk next door, where my guest for the podcast today is American actor, comedian, and impressionist Craig Gass. Craig Gass, known for the worst comedy show ever, is coming into 317 Gimmick Street, and we're going to kick up our heels, turn our microphones off, and shoot the breeze and talk about all kinds of things. Man, I tell you what, guy has a really, really interesting story. He was born into a deaf family. His mother and father and sister were completely without hearing, and he mimicked the voices on television to learn how to speak. And, his publicist reached out to me and said, hey, man, we'd like to have Craig Gass on your show. And, man, I did some research for him, and the guy's been around for quite some time, super talented, very funny, does some great impressions that are, like, spot on. So I said, hell yeah, man, let's hook it up. So Craig Gass is going to come by, and we're going to shoot the breeze and talk about everything he's got coming up. He's going to be headlining in Las Vegas later on. His first time to headline in Vegas, and he's got a bunch of shit going on. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm looking forward to talking to him, and I think you'll enjoy the conversation. But I'll tell you what, man, this damn weekend was a real head-scratcher for me. Started off, man, we finished up watching the NBA Finals. Golden State Warriors swept the Cleveland Cavaliers in 4 games. And god dang, man, that was an interesting series. I thought Cleveland might be able to pull one out in their own house, but they couldn't do it. Got swept. Golden State wins, champions, 3 out of the last 4 years. Very competitive. And then UFC 225 was on Saturday night. And, man, that was a damn good card. I enjoyed the hell out of that event. Everybody was on fire. Man, a tough loss for CM Punk. He put up a damn good fight. see where he goes from here. So I enjoyed the UFC 225 pay-per-view. Man, what a main event in that damn show, man. Yoel Romero versus Robert Whittaker. Holy smokes, man. God dang, those guys were just crushing each other. Hell of a damn fight. Robert Whittaker with the win there at the finish. Could have gone either way, really, but I had Whittaker winning that fight. Enjoyed that. So anyway, there was my Friday, there was my Saturday, and Sunday, hell, man, I was ready for WWE, Money in the Bank. I was all set up. At 5 p.m., I flipped up my laptop computer. I just jumped out of the shower. My wife was taking a little cat nap, and I was like, hey, man, I'm going to watch this pay-per-view, check out the Money in the Bank match, check out the ladder match, all that stuff that was coming up. And I had dedicated a 3-hour block of my time to watching that pay-per-view. I turned on the WWE Network, and all of a sudden, the pay-per-view was not on because I had my dates mixed up. It's on the 17th, not the 10th. I was a week early. Man, I'd be sitting there for a long-ass time waiting for that damn pay-per-view to start. So I couldn't believe I'd made such a mental error. Like I said, Friday, excellent. Saturday, excellent. Sunday was going to be excellent. So then I was stuck with a 3-hour block of time that I'd dedicated to that pay-per-view and was going to talk about it on the podcast. So I said, well, scratch that. Find something else to do. So I trained chest and tries, fired up some margaritas, and barbecued in my backyard. But I am looking forward to Money in the Bank this Sunday coming up on the WWE Network, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this Money in the Bank match goes. I'm looking forward to watching the whole event, actually. But anyway, kind of yanked the carpet out from under me when I had all my ducks in a row and to only find out that I was wrong on the date. And the pay-per-view is next week. What an idiotic mistake made by yours truly. But anyway, that's how my weekend was. Kicking here today, Craig Gass is about to come into the crib here. We're about to start shooting the breeze. But before we get to Craig Gass, let me ask you guys, is your home an ADT home? Because mine is, and yours should be too. Get ADT and help protect against break-ins, fire, and carbon monoxide. For a limited time, take advantage of ADT's lowest rates starting at just $28.99 a month from the most trusted name in home security. Plus, ADT is the first security company to help keep you safe at home and when you're on the go with their ADT Go app, which features a family locator, safe driving reports, and even includes a SOS button with 24/7 emergency response. And the best part is that you get ADT Go with the purchase of any security system. Just go to ADT.com/podcast to take advantage of ADT's lowest rate. 36-month monitoring contract required. Early termination and installation fees apply. Excludes taxes and fees. Applies to traditional services only. Certain markets excluded. Licenses available at ADT.com.
True crime fans rejoice. Small Town Murder is now on Podcast One. Crime and Sports' James Petrogallo and Jimmy Wisman look at small towns, what makes them tick, and the murders that took place there. In-depth research, horrible tragedy, and the host's comedic spin on the whole thing. What can go wrong? Subscribe to hear new episodes every Thursday on PodcastOne.com, the Podcast One app, and Apple Podcasts.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
And I'm rolling sound with Craig Gass, comedian, impressionist, actor. What do you like to be referred to as?
Whatever you want, man. I'm
human being.
Less masculine than you is the best way to fit me in today. Is less masculine than you. It's amazing, man. Even your voice. I don't even know if you had a chance to be less masculine with the voice that you have. You can't walk around with that voice and not be stacked, because that is one of the most masculine voices I've ever heard. Do people do impressions of you?
Dude, they do it all the time. Half the damn podcast out there. I got some buddies, Edge and Christian, and they've got a guy, I don't even know who it is. It's pretty spot on as far as doing me. There's a trainer down in WWE Performance Center that does a pretty much spot on me. And there's a bunch of them. Will Sasso does a pretty spot on Stone Cold impersonation. And I wasn't even going to ask you because you do so many people that I've looked up to, Christopher Walken, Sam Kinison, all the stuff that and your bag of tricks.
Yeah.
Were you ever a wrestling fan growing up?
I was a huge wrestling fan as a kid. I got into the tail end of Bob Backlund and then the beginning of Jimmy Superfly Snuka and Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant and Iron Sheik, and then I stopped following it for, after I turned like 13, 14, I got into rock music, and then it was all music. But it was, I had friends who were still into wrestling, and it was in the background, but I never followed it past Superfly Snuka was everything to me as a kid, and Bob Backlund too. Were you a fan of Bob Backlund?
Yeah, I was a fan of Bob Backlund, but I was, and I grew up in South Texas, so because wrestling was more regional back then, where'd you grow up at?
I grew up in New York.
Okay,
First
so
10
York.
years of my life in New York, then I went to Arizona,
Okay.
and my formative years were in Arizona.
Yeah, so since you were in that New York area, you picked up WWF, and then back where I was at, man, it was all Houston wrestling, and then I started catching, I was aware of Superfly Snuka, but I wasn't getting some of their early stuff. So I was a big Bob Backlund fan, but when I look back kind of at the history stuff, I was really into Superstar Billy Graham. If I'm not mistaken, Bob Backlund beat Superstar for that title.
Yeah.
Superstar went into a tailspin after that, and that kind of messed his head up because he was riding high, and they made a documentary on him. They called it Superstar Billy Graham, 20 years ahead of his time. Because really, he was a heel, and he was becoming so entertaining that he was almost turning into a babyface, which is what happened to me. So, basically, he could have been the first Stone Cold all those years ago, but Vince's dad, Vince Sr., didn't really, know, hey, man, let me just transition this guy, turn him into a babyface, or position him, instead of working with babyfaces, have him work with heels. And that would have basically turned him into a good guy.
Really?
And he could have continued the run. But they wanted Backlund to win the title. He did. It was super dependable. And then Superstar went on about his way.
Is there a lot of politics that goes into where your trajectory of your character is going to be going on behind the scenes? Like how hands-on are you in being able to create your story when you're in a big organization like
Man, it's hard.
Vince's?
In the beginning, it's hard because you're just trying to learn 101.
Have you ever been told to do something that you thought, I don't think this is going to work out, and it did?
Yeah, but I've also had things that, didn't work out and seemed like a good idea at the time. And, not be a part of creative meetings, but, hear ideas, say, hey, man, let's do this with Steve. No, he'll never do that. I'm like, well, you should have asked me. I probably would have loved to have tried that because I was willing to damn near try anything to get over. And that's what we say in our business, to get over is to become popular, whether you're a babyface or you're a heel, to either be loved or hated, but to get over. So once your music hits or you go out, people are standing at their feet or they're booing the shit out of you. This is my family-friendly show, by the way. Or, paying money to see your ass, come to the arena.
Yeah.
And that's what we mean by get over. And, the first 7 years of my career, I was paying my dues. I got Rookie of the Year. I got a belt when I got into WCW. But, there's a lot of politics. And it was the bureaucratic red tape and the BS. And, and it was an injury that got me fired from WCW. And I would end up in WWF, which is now WWE. And that's when to answer your question, that's when I could really start taking control. Once I had a foot in the door, had an established character and gimmick, and had some traction, and they started believing in me, and then I could use my voice more. Not this voice, just as far as voice my ideas, my thoughts,
have some
my sentiments,
influence
my opinions
on how.
Yeah, but at first you're just kind of it's their ride and you get a seat on it. Then all of a sudden it's both of your rides and you all have a seat on it and a hand in it.
Is it similar to comedy in like you? If you get a contract with Saturday Night Live, I know that Chris Farley, his first couple years, he was making $50,000 a year at Saturday Night Live. It's similar to. What do you call it? The American Idol shows where they basically, hey, we're giving you a big spotlight. We'll make you famous. You're going to make a few bucks. Is it like that at the beginning of a career in professional wrestling as well?
Man, I don't know. Because I can't speak to today because I'm kind of out of touch with like the Performance Center down in Florida or how guys are getting into business these days. But man, it goes right back to, and I'll transition this. It's like when you started getting on the road doing stand-up gigs and you're traveling in your car, whether you were solo or whether you had a pack of your buddies in there so you could split the cost of gas, lodging, and stuff like that. You first get in the business just because you wanted to be a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
I want to be a wrestler. It's like, okay, what does it take to get to the top? Well, you're not really concerned with getting to the top right now. You just want to learn the trade and learn psychology, learn the mechanics, and be able to put on a match without stinking the joint out. Same with you. You want to go out there and get some laughs without blowing, stinking the joint out.
And you're really happy to be a part of it.
Oh,
at least
yeah,
I was.
Absolutely, dude. You're one of the boys.
Yeah. I mean, just
same
being
with you guys. I mean, you guys are going out there. You're working a crowd, and it's like these days. Like if they're going to do Monday Night Raw, and as you and I are talking, it's Monday, so tonight I'll watch Monday Night Raw, and tomorrow I'll watch SmackDown. But these days, they'll kind of figure out everything before the bell rings and go out there and do it.
Yep.
Props. It takes a lot of hard work and craft to be able to pull that off at the high level, make it look good, make it seem real, and draw money. But back in the day, we would go out there. If you and me were working, Craig, and we're working at the Nashville Fairgrounds, let's just say there's, in wrestling, there's heels and there's baby faces, bad guys and good guys, right?
Right.
So let's just say you're the baby face, I'm the heel. We got two separate dressing rooms on the opposite sides of the building. The referee is going to say, hey, Craig, you're going over tonight. Do something quick. The referee will come to me over in my dressing room and say, hey, man, Craig's going over tonight. He's going to catch something quick on you. And I would say, okay. And then we'd go out there, and as soon as we lock up, I'd start talking to you because the heel always calls, the bad guy calls the match, or the guy with seniority. So, dude, I'd go out there, I'd call our match, and based on the response that we're getting, then you do something, a high spot, or you're taking control, trying to work my head, my arm, or whatever. We get a response from that crowd, we process that, and that's where I decide where we're going next. So, dude, it's all, I mean, you're living and dying. And dude, here's a real interesting thing because your backstory is your entire family is deaf.
Yeah.
Your mother,
my mom, my dad, and my sister are all completely deaf.
I want to talk about that, but I'm very hard of hearing. So
are you really?
Yeah.
Is that something that happened over the last? Just
natural hearing loss. Always had tubes in my ears, had my adenoids, tonsils taken. I just don't hear very good.
Okay.
But when I'm in a ring, for some reason, I can hear everything in the building, or I can feel it, and I absorb, the sound, energy, everything. I'm not deaf, but I just don't hear good. But when I get in that ring, dude, if you've got 70,000 people there, and one guy, boos out of 70,000, I can pinpoint where exactly where
really?
He's at. That's how in tune I am with that audience and what we're trying to do. So that's why, the business is funny, but you're working people, and based on it's like, okay, we got them now.
Yeah.
Okay. And now it's time to, I'm going to shine you up, and I'm going to get some heat on you. I got to kick the shit out of you, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to make your big comeback, and, and the people start coming, we're building them, and then we go into this big climactic comeback. You're, after me beating the shit out of you, you're making your comeuppance on me.
Yeah.
And then we start going into some finish sequences, and you end up catching something quick on me. But, dude.
But I got to ask you one question about that. Have you ever misunderstood the communication or had someone misunderstand you? Because if it has to be that intimate that the crowd can't know that you and I are pacing this out in the middle of the act.
Oh, absolutely.
There's got to be some miscommunication where afterwards said, "You son of a bitch! I said to slap me down." And
man, I was so embarrassed. Like how is it when you first get in the business on the road for a comedian? I mean, because I was working on a freight dock. I'd had a football scholarship to North Texas State University.
Okay.
My scholarship ran out, and I started working on a freight dock. I was driving a forklift, loading and unloading trucks, manual labor. I saw this commercial on TV for this wrestling school, so I joined up. I was in Dallas very shortly. I asked the promoter, I said, hey, man, when can I start working full time? And the territory was based in Tennessee. We all lived in Nashville. I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time. So I drove out there and started working. And my first match on the road, Dutch Mantell was the booker. And he's the guy that's at the show. He's working on the card as well. And he's going to tell you how long you're going to go and who's going over and who's losing. And he said, Steve, go out there and give us about 8 or 10 minutes with some guy working on our mask.
You never wrestled before.
No. I never wrestled in that territory, never wrestled that guy.
But you also don't really know what 8 or 10 minutes is in your head, maybe.
Dude, when that guy says go 8 or 10 minutes, I'm thinking, holy shit. What am I going to do for 10 minutes?
Because I'm thinking about in stand-up comedy, I'll never forget the first night I ever got on stage, the guy said, oh, this is your first time? All right, we're going to give you 3 minutes. And I said, 3? What can I do with, give me 10, at least 10, 15, when I didn't realize when you get on stage, it's a completely different story. 3 minutes can be a long time when people are staring at you. A long time.
It can be, and same thing with 8 or 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, you get your chops up, a couple of years go by, and then it's like, hey, man, I can't even get loose until, we're going 20 or 25 minimum. And so that's what you kind of graduate to.
Yeah.
And so,
same thing with stand-up.
Yeah.
Same with stand-up. You get used to it. You think you can do more, but you can't. And that is a classic rookie mistake that comedians try to get ahead of themselves. Say, I want to feature for a guy. And the feature spot is usually 20 to 30 minutes. But they don't have enough time. They have 10 minutes of strong material. Then they try to vamp for 10 minutes, and it's obvious they don't know what the hell to do until their time is run out. And it's fascinating to watch comedians bomb sometimes more than it is to watch somebody kill. And I don't know if there's a wrestling equivalent of it where it's just, for whatever reason, you ever had nights where, like, for whatever reason, the match just isn't interesting in the early days to the crowd?
Are you kidding me?
Really?
You could go out, damn near at my peak. Well, when I was white hot, it was bulletproof.
Of course. That's everything with Vince McMahon. That was like that.
But there's sometimes, like, we get in the business, all of a sudden you got a couple of years under your belt and think, hey, man, I'm pretty damn good at this. And I just go out there and shit the place one time and just nobody cheers. Nobody knows who the good guy and the bad guy. It's just one of those nights where everything goes wrong, and it's like people are sitting on their hands, and you're like, oh. And you go take a shower after the match, and you're like, I really thought I had this shit figured out.
Wow,
you
that's
still
amazing.
Suck.
I would never imagine that, because wrestling, more than anything, is the easiest thing to follow. It's just, it plays with your emotions. You get it right away. You get who to cheer for, who to cheer against. It's amazing to me that there could be a similar kind of thing that comedians go through where for some reason it just doesn't hit and the crowd just doesn't feel it.
Yeah, but how many times you've been in a place like, here's a classic place like Nassau Coliseum in Long Island, New York. Sure. Or whatever it's called. It's Long Island, right?
Yeah, I've been out there many times.
Okay, so that is a tough arena. Now, it's the Garden's right down the road. Meadowlands is right down the road.
Yep.
But for some reason, at Nassau Coliseum, that's a tough bunch there. And if you're a babyface coming back from an injury or from time off, and all of a sudden, here you come, they're probably going to boo your ass out of the building. So it's like Nassau Coliseum. If you're making a comeback, that's not where you want to be.
Really?
Yeah. And it ended up being a stronghold for me. But even then, it has its ups and downs. And dude, you've been on the road for how long doing this stuff? What do you do when you get a dead-ass crowd?
Well, now if I get a dead-ass crowd, I get a kick out of it. I get a sick thrill out of it not going well. When you first start doing stand-up, everything in your mind is so connected. You go, all right, I'm going to go out, and I've got this thing that I've worked on, and that works for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then I'll go into this next thing that I've figured out, and that's another 6, 7 minutes, and then I'll end with this thing that always kind of kills. And if anybody yells, you just go, I can't, man, I got a rhythm, everything's connected, but the longer you do it, the more you're able to let it go and go into whatever's going on in the crowd and then float back into your material. And then if you do it long enough, and as crazy as it sounds, I hope that something horrible happens in the audience so that I can stop everything and go, what's going on over here? I did a show once in Oklahoma City where a guy who was opening for me, he's standing on stage and he's clearly distracted by somebody on the left side of the stage. And he keeps looking over and going, ma'am, am I that ugly that you won't even look at me? She won't even look. What are you, freaking blind or something? Oh, are you blind? Oh, shit, I'm sorry. Anyways, and he tried to go back into his material. He said, you guys ever go to Walmart? And I said, who cares about Walmart? You just make fun of a blind woman. And he was like, I'm sorry. And it just, the only people laughing are me and 3 comedians in the back of the room, because we've been in that horrible spot thinking, holy shit, how am I going to get out of this? And he's not getting out of it, and it's a thrill for us because we want to see if you can make it happen. Yeah. Do you ever see other wrestlers make mistakes that get the crowd to turn the wrong way, and Is there something similar like that where you watch wrestlers screw up and you want to see if they can get themselves out of it?
These days, yeah, always. Because you always want to see sink or swim, whether it's sports, that, whatever. You want to see, hey, man, something unexpectedly happens, and can you make chicken salad out of chicken shit?
Right.
And it's like, going back to your point a few minutes ago, as a young guy coming up in the business, all of a sudden you get this confidence. You think, oh, man, and here's that grizzled vet who's still at the top. He's still at the top, but maybe you're a little bit better looking than him, got a little bit better body. But he's got a target on his back, and you think you're the guy.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, man, you go out there and just shit the bed, and all of a sudden that guy goes out there and just crushes it again. It's like... it's like those masters of comedy is like, okay, dude, like you said, it's trial by fire, getting burned to the ashes and coming up out of that. And that's why I always say, like, a lot of the promos these days are kind of scripted. And back in the old days when we were running Roughshod, if you and me working a program, Craig, I'm gonna go out there and talk. Hey man, we got this going on in Madison Square Garden, and you're gonna respond accordingly. And that's how we're gonna go. And
all improv.
Hopefully, all improv. We're going to have bullet points.
Yeah.
We know the pay-per-view's here. It's coming up this Sunday, and this belt is on the line.
Right.
And that's the way I like to do it, because when you look like you're trying to memorize something, or remember something that you read on a page,
if you're not,
it doesn't jump off, and it's not as organic, it ain't real.
If that's not your forte,
I don't feel it, and that's not how I roll.
So, what kind of comedy did you get into? Like, were you a fan of Sam Kinison?
I was a huge Sam Kinison fan, but going way back, Richard Pryor and George Carlin were a couple of my all-time favorites. And then, dude, I couldn't believe it. I was listening to you on the WTF podcast with Mark Maron. I can't believe you used to live with Mitch Hedberg, because my wife and I have him on the highest level. I find that guy so insanely funny. And you say, I'll put him on YouTube and say, man, check out Mitch Hedberg. And they'd never heard of him, because he died of a OD a long time
ago. Of a drug overdose, yeah.
And so all of a sudden, you're like, God, isn't that, they're not popping, they're not responding. I'm like, do you not get this?
Yeah.
This guy's a freaking genius.
Which, by the way, happened when Mitch would get on stage. Like, it would either the audience would either get it and he'd have a killer set for 20 minutes, or they wouldn't, and he'd have a really awkward 20 minutes on stage because they just didn't understand that rhythm. But then it got to a point before he passed away where he had his own crowd, he was becoming famous. And what's weird is after he passed, his fame grew, and I would meet people who would say, hey, have you ever met my favorite comedian, Mitch Hedberg? And they didn't even know that he was gone. They were just discovering him on YouTube, and they didn't know that he was gone. And Mitch would have loved knowing that you knew who he was. He would have loved. He was such a fan of pop culture and of music, and Mitch was like a Stephen Wright kind of style.
Right.
It was really and my two favorite stories about Mitch is the first night I ever worked with him in Seattle. It was in the mid-'90s. There'd be guys that would come through Seattle at the club where I was starting at, the Comedy Underground, that they'd have a reputation. Oh man, you got to see when this guy comes. There was a Patton Oswalt, there was Mitch Hedberg, there was Doug Stanhope, who had reputations before they came into town. And anyone who had a reputation, I wanted to open for, and I would always campaign for, hey, can I be the opening act for that? And to this day, I just left Houston. I was in Houston over the weekend. Anybody who walks into the club, I shouldn't say this out loud, but anybody who walks in the club and says, hey, I'm a local comedian, is it okay if I do a few minutes? I always say yes. Always. Just stick to your time. Just if they give you 5 minutes, just stick to your time and get up the stage. But yeah, of course, because I hated that rejection when I was starting out. And I still remember how much that hurt, where it was like, well, who cares if I do 5 minutes, man? There's a good crowd here. You can't let me do 5 minutes. So Mitch comes into town, and I get the gig. I'm going to be his opening act. And I see him before the show. Hey, Mitch, I'm Craig Gass. I'm really excited, man. I heard a lot about you. And he's like, oh, yeah, man, it's going to be a lot of fun. Mitch had this crazy rhythm.
Dude, his cadence and, like you said, the rhythm, I mean, that was that's what made his, I mean, I loved his material, but the way he delivered it was half the formula, in my opinion.
He was the most unique guy, and that first night that I met him, really was one of the most magical nights of comedy I've ever experienced, because Mitch gets up on stage. I go, hey, all right, please welcome your headliner, Mitch Hedberg. Mitch gets up, and the place is packed. Thursday night, it's packed. Usually Thursday's a little slow, then Fridays and Saturdays is when you get better audiences. It's sold out on Thursday night. Mitch gets up, all right. Hey, where is Thomas? Where is Thomas? And everyone's like, who the fuck is Thomas? And then in the back room you hear, I'm over here. There's no seats, man. I can't find it. And he goes, well, just sit anywhere, Thomas. You know what? Screw it. Just come up here and sit on the stool on the stage. And then from the back of the room, heading towards the front, you hear this guy working his way through them going, sorry, excuse me, sorry, excuse me, sorry. And everyone's looking around, and you see this guy make his way up to the stage. He turns around, and he sits down in the chair, and everybody starts laughing when he turns around. Nobody knows who the hell this guy Thomas is. But as soon as he sits down and faces the audience, everyone knows, man, that guy is high as shit. He looks baked. He's got a leather jacket on, and I'll never forget, he had a button that was a homemade button. It wasn't the logo Motorhead. He had typed the word Motorhead and made his own homemade button that just said Motorhead on it. And when he turned around, Mitch said, all right. Well, my name is Mitch, and these are my jokes. And he started to go into his material. Every joke that he told, it usually takes the audience about 2 or 3 seconds to get the joke, because he had a weird, unique style. And they would laugh. Then Mitch would start to go into his next joke when Thomas understood what just happened and would start laughing. And then Mitch would start laughing at Thomas and go, ha ha, hell yeah. And then the whole crowd would laugh again. And that is how every joke was received, with 1, 2, 3, 4 waves of laughter. It made his set I'm guessing about a third of what he was planning for a 45-minute set. But it truly was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever experienced, because it was just a giggling, laughing, like real catchy, positive energy. And it was magical, man. It was spiritual, man. Everybody's like chest felt lighter. It was really amazing. And my other favorite story is when I first moved in with Mitch. I was trying to get my bearings straight, because I'm going to be living with Mitch. I'm going to have the apartment to myself for the first weekend. Mitch is leaving to go to he's got a show in the Poconos. So my first weekend back in New York, I'm going to be alone in this apartment, and he's trying to tell me, all right, hey, so you see outside there's a grocery store, and it's just 2 blocks that way. Oh, and the train station's that way. And then this is where the mailbox is. This is where, and he's giving me the keys. And at one point he goes, oh, hey, Craig, this is a map of the New York City subway. And on the back of his front door was this enormous map of the New York City subway. And the first time you look at it, it's very confusing, because there's blue and yellow and red lines going in every direction. And I'm looking at it going, what the hell? And Mitch goes, so that's how that works. And then he walked away, and I went, what the hell does that mean? That's how that works. You mentioned George. George Carlin was my mentor. George flew me to Los Angeles. I met George when I was doing comedy 6 months, and he offered to help me with my career. And I never took him up on it. I just wanted to talk to him, and I would call him. In fact, when I moved in with Mitch, I actually had this is a really dumb story, but Mitch came home one night from a club, Dangerfields, and I said, I'd never worked at Dangerfields, and I said, how was Dangerfields? And Mitch goes, man, I think that place is run by the mob. And I went, are you serious? And Steve, this is going to sound really stupid, but I had a fear. I don't know where it came from, but I had a fear that the entertainment business was run by the mafia. I'm not sure. I saw something somewhere, and I know part of it is linked to, there's some story where didn't that guy Suge Knight like hold Vanilla Ice over a balcony or something? Allegedly, yeah. And so I just always had this fear that if I ever started to really get some traction in the comedy business, someone's going to kick my door down and go, you work for us now. And so I called George Carlin, and I said, hey, George, Craig Gass, I got a question for you. It's really stupid, but just call me, man. I just something I'm concerned about. And he called me that night and he said, hey, what's going on? And I said, Mitch just got home and he said that he has a weird feeling about this club that he worked at tonight. He said he thinks it's run by the mob, and I've always had a fear. And I guess my question is, does the mafia run the entertainment business? And there was a long pause, and George said, not that I know of, but I'll tell you a story. When I was your age, and he told me this incredible story. There was these two guys who were brothers, these two Italian guys who used to show up in the late 60s, early 70s. George used to work at down in Greenwich Village, and these guys would offer to give him money, but kept saying, you should let us manage you. We'd like to manage your career. And then George would be friendly. Yeah, it sounds great. I could use some help. And they finally one night said, George, let's sit down. Let's have a conversation. We're going to go to a restaurant. Let's put together a deal so we'll be your representative from now on. And he said, where do you want to go to dinner? And they told George the restaurant, and George said, I'm a really picky eater. And they picked a place that I said, sorry, guys, I don't like seafood. And that's how he got out of it. If they would have picked any other place, he would have gone. He just didn't like seafood. Or whatever it was Italian or seafood or something he didn't like. He found out 20 years later, these two guys were responsible for over 100 murders in New York City. They were mob. They were mafia. And he had no clue that they were in the mafia. And there's also a Kinison story that is frightening, that Sam used to live in New York. This is in Sam Kinison's book that was written about him by his brother, Bill Kinison. You ever met Bill?
No.
Bill Kinison wrote a book about him called Brother Sam. And you were a fan of Sam, right? Mm-hmm. And Sam was from Houston. Are you from Houston or Austin?
I was born in Austin, and we grew up 100 miles south of Houston. 100
miles south of Houston?
Yeah.
In what town?
Straight down Highway 59, southwest. People say, oh, you're going to be in the Gulf. Down by Victoria.
Yeah, Victoria. Okay, yeah. I just spent the whole week in Houston, so I was staying off of 59 over by Bush Intercontinental.
Yeah.
But I kept going up and down 59 to do radio and TV appearances all week this week.
And 59's easy, but you get on 45 and you might as well paint a number on the side of your car. It's like,
really?
That's aggressive. Anyway, keep going with these.
But Sam, who started out in Houston. With the Outlaws of Comedy, with Bill Hicks and all those guys. I guess there was a period of time where Sam Kinison was living in New York City, and these mafia guys were giving him cocaine. And Sam was happy to do their cocaine for them. And they kept saying, hey, we want to help you out. We want to manage your career. And Sam kept going, yeah. And he just kept stringing them along because they were giving him free cocaine. And then finally one night they said, Sam, let's go up to our place. They give him a bunch of coke. And they put down a contract. Sam, you keep messing around. Here's a contract. Let's do this. We're going to help you. We'll pay your bills. We'll take care of you. But let's sign this contract. And Sam goes, guys, you guys are fucking coke dealers. I can't do this. You guys are just drug dealers. Whatever. And then and they beat the shit out of him. And he called his brother the next day, crying and saying, hey man, I'm in a lot of trouble. These guys, they're in the mafia and they're saying they're going to kill me. And Bill is talking to Sam. He gets a call on the other line. He clicks over. It's Rodney Dangerfield. Rodney says, Bill, I want to put Sam in my new HBO special. It's a young comedian special, and I want Sam to be one of the featured comedians. And he said, Rodney, Sam's in a lot of trouble. He's got some mafia guys, and he says they want to kill him. And he said, who are they? And he said, I don't know. And he said, ask Sam who they are. He clicks over, Sam, I got Rodney on the line. He wants to know who these guys are. And he said, well, they're two guys. They're brothers, and their names are whatever. Bill clicks back over. Their names are whatever. And Rodney says, okay, I know who it is. Tell Sam to come to L.A. I'll take care of it. Sam goes back to Los Angeles. Carl LeBeau, his best friend, also backs this story up. That a week later, in Hollywood, a limo pulls up to the Comedy Store, and these two brothers get out of the limo, and they hug Sam Kinison and say, we are sorry, we made a huge mistake, but all is forgiven, and it'll never happen again. And to this day, Bill Kinison said, I have no idea who Rodney called, but Rodney made a call and fixed the whole thing. By the way, if you don't know anything about Sam Kinison, one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life is Bob Costas used to do a show, an incredible late-night show that would air. It would be Johnny Carson, followed by Dave Letterman, followed by Bob Costas. And Bob Costas used to do a 30-minute show where every one of his subjects would, at some point in that 30-minute program, would go, man, how did you know that? Bob Costas did his homework. He did due diligence, and he was an amazing interviewer. And I loved watching his show just because it was fascinating to see how much he knew about everybody. And he had Sam Kinison as a guest, and I thought, how is he going to know anything about Sam Kinison? And Bob said, Sam, back in the late 80s, I used to watch you back at the Comedy Store. And back then, your entire act was based on that day's obituaries. And I used to say to myself, you know what? This guy's funny, but he's too dark, and he's never going to make it. And Sam explained, he's like, man, I can't believe you remember that. Yeah, I used to go on stage, and I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Sam Kinison. I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight. And I'd bring out I'd get the paper from that day, and I'd have the obituaries out, and I go, I want to thank you guys for supporting stand-up comedy. I'll tell you a couple people that you won't be seeing here tonight. And then he would just start reading through obituaries and goes, like Esther Goldberg? Yeah, she didn't catch the bus. She's not here. But apparently, if you want to see Esther's work, she'll be displaying it this Sunday at Evergreen Mortuary. It was the most evil comedy ever. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was so dark. God, I haven't done Sam in a long time, but that is just the darkest. But George, I'm going all over the place. I'm sorry. We had a conversation before we started about how we're both ADD.
Yeah.
But I wanted to tell you about George Carlin, that George taught me a lot as a kid about how to be funny. George Carlin and Richard Pryor were everything to me as a kid. And George affected the way I communicated with my friends, because he had a style and a technique where he would put an emphasis on a joke by cupping the mic and saying, you are a moron. And my friends and I started talking to each other like that on the phone. Like, you want to get together on Friday? Yes, you moron. And we just would accent stuff with these like techniques that we learned from George. He taught us how to be funny, but as an adult, he taught me how to be a decent human being, because he was just such a kind, thoughtful person.
All right, let's take a quick pause for the calls and give big ups to TrueCar. These days, news travels lightning fast, which is great if you're a sports fan. Between status updates and breaking news notifications, you can always be up to the minute on every team and every game. While this is great for sports, it's the opposite when it comes to buying a car. Go online and you are bombarded with numbers. Invoice, list price, dealer price. It's hard to know how to recognize a good price. Well, not anymore. Introducing True Price from TrueCar. It's the only price you need to know, because it's exactly what you'll pay for the car you want, including fees and accessories. And how do you know if your True Price is a great price? Well, because TrueCar shows you what other people paid for the same car you want, so you know how to recognize a good price. And your certified dealers know this, so they set their true price competitively so they can win your business. So when you're ready to buy a new or used car, visit TrueCar to enjoy a more confident car buying experience. Some features not available in all states. You're also going to need car insurance for that new vehicle. Go to geico.com, and in 15 minutes, you could be saving 15% or more on car insurance. That's right. Save hundreds of dollars on car insurance at geico.com. Extra money in your pocket? It may just be the most rewarding thing you do today. Heads up, listeners of the Steve Austin Show, pay attention. I want to keep this podcast free to download with minimal ads, and to do so, I would appreciate your participation in the Podcast One survey. The responses will help make sure that the right advertisers are matched up with you folks, the audience. The survey is short and will take no more than 5 minutes of your day. Either go to podcastone.com/mysurvey or visit Podcast One, that's podcastone.com, and click on the survey banner. This survey will go a long way in making the Steve Austin Show even better, and that's the bottom line, because I said so. Oh, one more thing. Thank you. All right, before we get the rest of my conversation with Craig Gass, let's talk about the WWE Network for a minute. The WWE Network is an online video streaming service where you can stream every WWE pay-per-view live. You can watch more than 10,000 hours of video on demand. You can get a look behind the scenes with WWE's groundbreaking original series and documentaries. You can access anywhere, anytime, and on any device, including game consoles, TVs, phones, tablets, and computers. You can watch it anywhere. And you can watch every single stunner and every mudhole stomping by yours truly, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now through June 18th, we have a special offer just for listeners of the Steve Austin Show. New subscribers get a 2-month free trial when they sign up for the WWE Network at WWENetwork.com/Austin. Your 2-month free trial includes WWE Money in the Bank, which is this Sunday, June 17th, featuring the Money in the Bank ladder match, plus Ronda Rousey versus Nia Jax for the Raw Women's Championship. WWE Extreme Rules on July 15th, where for one night only, the WWE throws the rule book out the window and anything goes. So say, oh, hell yeah, and get on over to WWENetwork.com/Austin to start your 2-month free trial.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
I used to have a pen pal when I was a kid who I lost touch with when I started doing stand-up. And she, out of the blue, found me and called me one day. And I said, how'd you find me? And she said, this is a really crazy story. George Carlin just performed out here in Miami. And I sent him a note because I remember the last time I talked to you, you said you were starting to do stand-up and that George Carlin was helping you. And George performed out here in Miami. And I wrote a note and I gave it to a security guard and I said, hey, can you give this to George Carlin? And it just said, you and I have a mutual friend. His name's Craig Gass. I've lost touch with him. He used to be a pen pal of mine. And I guess George got the note and told the security guard, find whoever wrote this note and send them backstage with whoever's with them. And he brought me backstage to say hello to me. And he said, I don't have my phone numbers with me right now, but I can tell you that Craig is he's getting thrown out of a lot of comedy clubs, but he seems to like that. He seems to enjoy that. And he's having a lot of fun. But I don't have any of my numbers, but I can tell you he's happy and he's having a really good time. And I said, that's amazing. But how'd you get my phone number? And she goes, well, that's the other half. You got to hear this. Listen to this. She plays her answering machine message. Boop. Hey, Lisa, it's George Carlin. I just met you last Saturday. I'm home right now, and this asshole moves around a lot, so I got 5 different phone numbers for this sucker, but let me give you the phone numbers that I have. And he listed every number that he had, and she tried all the numbers until she found me. And that is how thoughtful he was. And the definition of George, he talked about his wife, Brenda, all the time. His wife was diagnosed with breast cancer and died 3 weeks later on Mother's Day. I tried to talk to him. I didn't know how to. I was already intimidated by him because he's George Carlin. I didn't know how to say to him. I called him and said, "Hey George, it's Craig. I didn't know when I saw you earlier today that Jerry, his manager, had told me, Brenda just passed, and I didn't know. And I've never heard anybody your age talk about his wife as much as you do, and I don't know what to say, but I just want to say I'm really sorry to hear about what happened." And he said, "Hey, I feel you. Yeah, man, it's life, It's really tough, but I got to go do the Tonight Show, so I got to run out of here. But listen, can I call you tomorrow? And we'll continue from here." And I said, "Sure." And he goes, "All right, I'll give you a call. But I feel what you're trying to say to me. I just got to go." And I said, all right, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And he said, "All right, don't take your dick out on the bus." And he hung up the phone. And I went, what the hell does that mean? And I called his opening act, Dennis Blair, to say, is he okay? Like, I tried to talk to him. He said, he is. I actually, last week when she passed, I went with my wife to go to the house. He lives a couple miles from me. We talked to him, and he said he was really tired. He said, I got to go to bed. And so he said, all right, well, if you need anything, you call us. And he said, okay. And we stayed in the living room as he walked away, and we stayed with his daughter as he went to go to bed. And he said, my wife and I both saw this happen. George walked down the hall. He opened the door to his bedroom, and we could both see inside his bedroom. George had taken all of Brenda's stuffed animals. She loved to collect stuffed animals that they had all over the house. George had taken all of Brenda's stuffed animals and had put them all in the bed, and he was sleeping with all of Brenda's stuffed animals. And that is what George was. And as much as he offered to help me with my career, I really wanted a father figure, and I wanted to talk to him about things that he had spoke about on stage, and I wanted to hear more about his thoughts about religion and about politics and about drugs, and I wanted his friendship more than anything else. So I didn't really take him up on that offer.
Just in listening to his material, the way he talked about everything in depth, I mean, he had so many solutions for life problems and his take on things. I thought that guy was so smart. I thought, you're going to think bullshit on this, I thought he made a good president.
I agree. Not only that, I remember when Bill Hicks, one of the best comments about Bill Hicks. It's on the cover of one of his albums that was released posthumously after he passed. There's a quote from, I want to say it was an ESPN broadcaster, and the quote is, "If Bill Hicks had lived another 10 years, he would have started a revolution." Did you become familiar with Bill Hicks's material?
No, dude, I might get on YouTube and that might jar some memories, but no, I'm not sure I remember that guy.
Bill Hicks is an Austin guy. He's from Austin, and then he made a name for himself in Houston as part of the Outlaws of Comedy. But yeah, George...
what happened to Bill Hicks?
Bill died of, I believe, pancreatic cancer. And Bill was... that guy, he had a way of taking incredibly deep and complicated topics and making it so simple. One of the best examples I can give you of that is, he grew up in Austin. He grew up in the Bible Belt, and he had a story about talking about religion on stage, and some people getting upset with him and following him in the parking lot and saying, "Hey buddy, hey buddy, we're Christians. We don't like what you said." And I went, "Well, forgive me." Which is like, it's the most simple concept and that was Bill. Bill was able to, my God, Bill became the patron saint of stand-up comedy for 20 years. I think Bill actually screwed comedy up because Bill didn't care about making people laugh. And a lot of lesser able comedians attempted to do what Bill did for the next 10, 15 years with nowhere near the same results as Bill. They just alienated the audience. Bill was just a really brilliant man who also was part of that Outlaws of Comedy. God, man, I'm telling some serious stories here. I'm sorry if I'm getting...
No, man,
I haven't said anything funny yet.
Well, who else was influential in your career? Because like in the wrestling business, like Ric Flair was a big influence of mine. He's my favorite pro wrestler of all time. I think he's the greatest.
Did you see him with...
be Ric Flair Jr.
Really?
Before I turned into Stone Cold. I mean,
did you grow your hair out?
Oh yeah, dude, I had long hair down the middle of my back. But there's only one Ric Flair.
Yeah.
So he was a guy that I emulated. Who else did you take stuff from or influence you?
Well, there's a lot of them over the years. There was George and Richard, and then later Chappelle. I love watching Chappelle work. Chappelle and a guy named Tony Woods changed my whole attitude when I got to New York. I started working on the Howard Stern Show back in 1995, and what I would do is in the beginning I started doing an awful piece of comedy called Sam Kinison Calling in Live from Hell. Anytime someone that we could all agree was an asshole, that we could all agree, there's just no arguing, like Jeffrey Dahmer gets beat to death, and then the next day I would be on the air calling in a Sam Kinison calling live from the gates of hell with Jeffrey Dahmer. "Hey guys, I know you guys are just heard the news, and yes, Jeffrey Dahmer is here. I'm broadcasting live from hell, and Jeff already has his own cooking show, and he's looking at my ass like it's a T-bone. Oh! And it was just... And then I started doing these really abstract characters on the show, like Al Pacino had twins, and I said, wouldn't it be funny if one of the babies was a regular guest on this show? And we would have these segments where you go, "So you're Al Pacino's baby. What do you like to do for fun?" "All right, I like to pee." "You like to pee?" "My mother, Beverly D'Angelo, whenever she changed my diapers, I give her a quick squirt right in the face. Hoo-ah. And she loves it." It was terrible. It was things kept rolling, and my role on the Howard Stern Show kept growing, and I was starting to write for the show. So I called Mitch Hedberg up. "Hey, Mitch, I think I need to come back to New York. Is it cool if I stay with you until I get on my feet?" "Yeah, man, you can stay as long as you want." So I packed my stuff up, moved out to New York, and started doing stuff on the Stern Show. And when I got to New York, my high-energy attitude that I had doing stand-up in Seattle did not work at all in New York. And
different vibe?
Totally different vibe. I remember people saying, I used to, because I'm a big rock music fan. I grew up listening to it was like Motley Crue and Rat, and then eventually Metallica and the heavier stuff. And I wanted to, I guess I was influenced by that rock star vibe, and that was my attitude on stage, was to be loud and make it a party. And when I got to New York, I remember very specifically one audience that I will never forget, where one guy spoke on behalf of the entire audience and said, "Man, shut the fuck up." I went, "Point taken, sir." And I would watch these two guys, Dave Chappelle and Tony Woods, who were so quiet that people would go, shh, you'd have to lean in, and they would clock you. You wouldn't even see what they were carrying. And I'll never forget Tony Woods. I can actually single out as the hardest I've ever laughed in my entire life. This guy, I was about to walk out of this club that I was working at called the Boston Comedy Club, which is being featured now on that HBO show Crashing. I'm about to walk out the door, and the doorman at the time is this really great comedian named Bert Kreischer. And Bert was always cool to let me know, like, hey, I know you're new. You got to watch this guy. This guy's name is Patrice O'Neal. This guy's name is Dave Chappelle. This guy's name is Bill Burr. You watch this guy. And I would stick around and watch. So I'm getting ready to walk out. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I go, man, I think I'm going to go home. Is there somebody I should watch? And he goes, dude, Tony Woods is going on. And I go, who's Tony Woods? He goes, you don't know Tony Woods? Oh, my God, dude, Tony Woods is like the funniest guy in the world. And I go, all right. So I turn around, I walk back in, I sit down. This dude, Tony Woods, the older black dude, gets on stage. He is so quiet that he's almost whispering. The whole place is silent. And he goes, yeah, man, I still remember the joke. I love pets. I do, man. I love pets. But I can't keep them because I travel a lot. So when I come home, my pets are usually dead. So I had to get a pet that could take care of himself. So I got a monkey. Yeah, man, I got a monkey. That monkey's cool as shit, too, man. And when I come home, I'll take that monkey, I'll put him in a suit, and I'll take him out to the park, which is great. Because when you have a monkey with a suit on, white people will talk to you. And I love talking with white people. I'll have a little old white lady will go, look at that monkey. Look at your cute little monkey. And I'll go, bitch, that's my brother. And I went, oh my God. I jumped off my chair. I landed face down on the floor, and I was inhaling dirt off of the floor. I've never laughed that hard. That was the most shocking punchline I had ever heard. And Tony Woods and Dave Chappelle, similar comedians, absolutely changed my style. And I still love watching Chappelle go fishing. He calls it going fishing. He'll just go out for, I saw him a couple weeks ago at the Comedy Store. He showed up and just did 2 hours about, what is that guy's name? It was the dude from was it Chuck Berry? Yeah, Chuck Berry, the guy. No, that's Chuck.
Chuck Barris.
Chuck Barris. Chuck Berry, the musician. There was a sex tape of Chuck Berry that used to exist on VHS tape, and apparently somebody put it on the internet. And Chappelle did 2 hours about the Chuck Berry sex tape a couple weeks ago, and it was brilliant. It was amazing. But the coolest thing about doing stand-up for me is being able to work with my favorite comedians and getting to watch funny comedians for free.
Yeah, but what's the writing process for you? Because I'm listening to some of your interviews and reading about you, and you talk about when you're writing stuff. I mean, like, what is that process like? I mean, like, what would Carlin do to come up with all that genius stuff he came up with?
Well, George was obsessed with words. He was obsessed with words, and he was obsessed with the English language and the little nuances that changes the language from this to that. I remember when I first started doing radio, I remember him telling me, you can be pissed off, but you can't be pissed on, And I said, yeah, like all the little things that you can say on the air. Like if you say it this way, it's okay. But if you say it that way, you can't. It's illegal by whatever our morals and standards are. But for me, it's stories. I tell a story to friends, and when my friends laugh really hard, and I go, shit, I should do that on stage. It's like there was a moment that I had at a Slayer concert. I went to a Slayer Megadeth concert. Believe it or not, the guys in Slayer and Megadeth are both huge comedy fans, and they always come out to comedy shows. And so I asked if I could go to their show in Long Beach. Come on down. We'll leave you something at the door. And I go to the box office, and there's tickets and backstage passes. And I looked at my buddies, and I went, dude, we got to go back and see devil, whatever these devil worshipers are doing. Right. Like, we got to see what this devil stuff is all about. So we start walking in the backstage area, There's just a bunch of trucks and equipment being moved around, and a guy in the backstage area stopped me and said, Craig, you're the comedian? Hey, I just want to say, I don't want to bother you. I just want to say hello. I'm a big fan. My name's Kenny. And I said, hey, Kenny, nice to meet you. Are you Kenny G? And he goes, yeah. And I go, what the hell are you doing at a Slayer concert? And he goes, my kid's a big metalhead. And right at that moment, a Slayer fan jumped on Kenny G. One of those denim jackets with the patches like, hey, I like Slayer. Ooh. Like, I don't know why, but all Slayer fans, I think, sound like that. Yeah. Kenny G. Ooh. I don't even know if I'm doing that right. Ooh. It sounds like the Cookie Monster. Cookie. Ooh. I like Kenny G. All right, whatever. I'll work on that. But the point is, while this guy, Satan, is on top of Kenny G, I turn around and look at my buddy and I give him my camera phone. I go, dude, take a picture. That's Kenny G. Just said hi to me. But make it look natural. Make it look natural. Let me just, Kenny, hey, what were you saying about the, and I looked at my friend with the camera and I just tried to do like a casual, like, I don't know why, but I have this dumb thought that my casual face is just like, hey, like, you know, and all I see is my friend with the camera phone going, where do I push? I don't know. What am I? And I'm trying to keep Kenny G engaged because I want this to look casual when Dave Mustaine, the singer of Megadeth, walks past us with a couple of his bandmates and some friends. And I hear him say to them, are you guys leaving? All right. Do you want to say a prayer? All right, come on, let's do this. And they formed a Megadeth prayer circle behind me and Kenny G. And I'm looking at my friend going, take the picture. Take the picture. And he got it. It's on my Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/ILoveGas with 2 S's. Go to my profile pictures, and you'll see a picture of me talking to Kenny G while Megadeth is in a prayer circle behind us. That will never happen again in humankind.
I would have thunk it.
Yeah. So when I tell stories like that to friends and they go, and they start laughing, I'll think like, all right, I should just do that on stage. And I'll start telling stories like that on stage. But I've been doing comedy now for 25 years, and now I feel like I'm doing stuff that's more me than ever. I don't feel like I'm doing material. I'm just sharing really embarrassing stories about myself, which is kind of where I'm at. I feel most comfortable because that's who I am. I get excited about life. I get really excited about meeting people. And as a result, I say a lot of dumb stuff. And just going back and reviewing how stupid I am seems to be where I feel most comfortable on stage.
Man, in reviewing some of the dumber things you did back in the day, this is where, kind of the parallel of stand-up comedy and pro wrestling. How is traveling on the road these days? Because a while back, you was pretty out there with respect to drugs.
Yeah. Did you ever go through a drug phase?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, wait, not heavy duty.
Okay.
But have been around the horn? Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was just a peer pressure thing. The only people at school who didn't like me were the guys who were doing drugs. And so I started doing drugs with them so they would like me. And otherwise they were going to beat the crap out of me. So, and then I had that genetic trait that it took me a long time to realize that I am flawed in that I don't know when to stop. And that is a humbling experience, man. That is the difference between life and death, is just swallowing your pride and saying, you know what, man, I am not capable of doing. I have no control over this. And it's a tough thing to admit. In that first year that I got clean, 7 of my friends died. They're all comedians. Mitch was the first one to go. 4 drug overdoses, 3 drinking and driving car accidents, all in that first year that I got clean. And sadly, each one of those deaths and many more since then have reinforced that I'm doing the right thing. And it's tough because whenever I would go back to Minneapolis and do shows, Mitch's parents would, I just knew I should call them and invite them to come hang out and spend some time with them. And at some point in the evening, it would come up like, do you think we could have done anything? And it's a really tough thing to say. I don't, there's people in my life who I love. And when I was at my worst, you could tell me it hurts us to watch you behaving like this. And it hurts me to hear that from you. But for some reason, I'm still, I'll handle it. I'll be all right, But I hate that I'm making you feel like this. But I kind of enjoy doing it, I still can't see what you see. I think I can, but you have to and if you're lucky, you'll get beaten down without dying and be able to see yourself and have that moment of clarity to go, wow, I can't live like this anymore. And it's really, God, it is so tough because you feel enslaved. You really do, man. It's like I would talk to guys. I knew guys in the music business. I knew comedians who were clean and sober, and I would I go, hey, so you don't nothing at all, huh? You don't, huh? So I'm just asking you out of curiosity. I'm just asking. I'm just want to know how do you do that? Like how does that, And it was obvious to them that I'm asking for myself,
right? Just
as much as it is when somebody comes up to me and says, "How do you do it?" I'm just asking, and I know where you're coming from when you ask me that, but I would ask people, and it was shocking to me because I thought, man, I don't know if I can live like that. I don't know, because I had just lived for so long in a certain way that I just didn't know how to come back to that.
Yeah, but when you got cleaned up, you was clean for almost a damn year, and then you went back in.
Yeah. Well, what got me...
And then you had that moment of clarity. It's like, hey, man, now I know this shit ain't good for me.
It was a heart attack.
Yeah.
I had a heart attack, and it scared me straight for a year and 2 weeks. I got in a bad relationship with a girl that I shouldn't have been involved with, and it was it really was tumultuous, and she used to beg me to do coke with her, knowing that I had a heart attack doing coke, and she'd say, why don't you just do it in moderation like I do? And I'd have to go, bitch, that's what I'm trying to tell you. I can't do anything in moderation. I'm not. And then we got in a big fight on New Year's Eve, and I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to show her. I'm going to hurt myself. And then I went off the rails. And I was shocked that I couldn't get back on. I kept falling, and I just drifted away for 11 and a half months until the 2-year anniversary of my heart attack, which was December 14th. And then all of a sudden a light just came on, and I just thought, oh my God, I had a heart attack 2 years ago. I wasn't even that hammered that night. I was watching a Steel Panther show. They used to be called Metal School, and I'm watching Metal School at the Roxy, and I have a beer in my hand. I've only had a couple beers that night, and it's past midnight. Now it's December 14th, and all of a sudden I go, man, I am circling around opportunities. I'm paying my mom's bills. I've been paying my mom's bills now for 18 years, and I'm circling around opportunities where I could literally take care of her for the rest of her life. So why am I messing with this for something as selfish as this, And so I had half a beer in my hand, and for the first time in my life, I took that beer, held it over the garbage, and went, oh, and I watched it go in the garbage, and it was crazy. I have a lot of friends now and it's shocking to me how many people in music and in radio and in comedy are clean. There was a point where I'm debating over whether or not to get into this because this is kind of a heavy thing, but something's telling me that you would appreciate this. But there was a point I've been clean now for 13 years. There was a point about 6 or 7 years in where I wasn't maintaining. I wasn't doing the things I got to do maintenance. And I started having thoughts of like, it wasn't all that bad. I just started having thoughts that were like, wow, that's a weird thing because I had a heart attack. How was it not all that bad? And I decided to go to a program and do 30 meetings in a program for 30 days. The first night of which I went with a friend of mine who's a musician, super cool dude. We go to this meeting, and my musician buddy says in the meeting that he prays every night. And I looked at him and I went, wow, I've never known anybody who prayed. That might sound crazy, but I'd never known anybody who prayed. And so on the way home, I said, hey man, you don't take this the wrong way, but you're such a cool dude. I can't see you praying. And he said, yeah, man, I'm down with God. I'm down with Jesus. And I was like, so how does that, like, how does praying work? Like, how does that, as stupid of a question as it is? And he said, you know what, man, it's not like I sit on the edge of my bed and I go, hey, please, it's like, it's a constant conversation. And, if you try it, man, you'll be surprised, man. And you know what? I'm not always asking for stuff. Sometimes I'm just saying thank you for what I have. because I'm grateful. And, but yeah, man, you should try it. And I was struggling because I was surrounded by clean people. I was surrounded by people in the program, but I never worked the 12-step program. I never done the steps, and I stayed sober for 6-7 years, not working the steps. And, so that night, I'm at the beginning of this self-imposed, I'm going to do 30 meetings in 30 days. I go home and I sit on the edge of my bed and I put exactly the opposite of what he told me to do. I just, like when you're a kid, I had my hands together and I said, all right, if you're real out there, please show me a sign and show me that you're real, because I need some strength. And I did that every day for 30 days for that. I went to 30 meetings in 30 days. And on the 30th day, at the 30th meeting that I went to, there was a speaker who was riveting. Everything this guy spoke, for some reason, he used words that I use. He spoke a language that I understood, and everything he went, I was like, oh man, absolutely. Oh my God. I really enjoyed this guy. And then at some point he stopped and went, hey, am I over my time? Did I go too long? Oh, I did? All right. So how do I summarize this? Basically, if you find yourself praying for the first time in your life and you're asking God for strength, and if you're asking God to show you a sign that he's real, I'm here to tell you that I am your sign, and that God is trying to tell you need to start working the steps. And I just went, and nobody else in the room even reacted to that. And I remember looking around going, what the hell? Nobody else felt that like that. And I had to walk up to the guy afterwards and go, man, that was really heavy. And he goes, oh, man, thank you. I appreciate it. And I go, no, you got to understand. I've never prayed in my life. And I've been praying for 30 days, asking for a sign. I've done it this was my last day that I was giving myself. And it became it was a really heavy, and I'd never experienced something like that before. And that was intense.
So are you still working the steps? Or are you still praying?
Yeah, I still have a dialogue, and the crazy thing was I wanted to distance myself when I told my girlfriend about it. I remember calling her up and saying, man, you're not going to believe this. And she knew that I'd tried praying, and she said, I'm getting goosebumps hearing that. And my first reaction was, yeah, I don't know what that was. But I knew what it was. I was just kind of freaked out by it, and it was the most real thing I've ever felt. And yes, that was a day that made me realize that I had, I've never had a response like that to something that I put out into the universe. So the answer is yes. I never worked the steps, which was the message that I got back, but I understood the sign, and it helped tighten up what I was doing. And I regularly check in now. I check in and I maintain my maintenance on a regular basis now.
There's never a dull week in the world of professional wrestling, so to keep up on all of it, be sure to subscribe to the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast here at Podcast One. I produce 2 new shows each week. Every Thursday on our flagship show, I'm joined by a co-host from the wrestling journalism field to talk about the hot topics in WWE and elsewhere. Every Friday, I'm joined by a guest who has worked in the wrestling business, including ex-WWE creative team members like Kevin Eck talking about Drew McIntyre.
Drew was a young guy, and did it go to his head, and did he walk around like he was the chosen one? He did, and I was frank with him, and I said, Drew, just so you know, this is how they view you.
And Podcast One's own Christian Harloff, talking about his days working for WWE and Vince McMahon specifically.
As far as the perception of him, he's the king. He walks in, and it's just, you can feel it. If the Force was real, you would feel the Force. It was powering into the room when he enters.
Just search Wade Keller on Apple Podcasts or on the Podcast One app or anywhere else you listen to podcasts.
All right, before we wrap up this podcast and ride off into the sunset, let me get you guys up to speed on TheraWorks. If you're one of the millions of Americans who suffers from muscle cramps in your legs and feet, relief is finally in sight. TheraWorks Relief is a topical foam that's clinically proven to relieve muscle cramps fast, and with daily use, TheraWorks Relief can even prevent muscle cramps before they start. Finally, you'll be able to get a good night's sleep and do all those activities you love and not worry about muscle cramps. TheraWorks Relief is a life-changing product, and best of all, you don't even need a prescription. It only takes minutes to apply, absorbs quickly, and it really works. It's time you made it yours as well. Get TheraWorks Relief today at select CVS, Rite Aid, and Walgreens pharmacies, or at TheraWorksRelief.com. That's THERAWORX Relief.com.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
All right, let's hit the pause button for just a second. This conversation will be continued, part 2 with Craig Gass, coming up this Thursday on the Steve Austin Show. Part 1 today, part 2 Thursday, and that's the bottom line. Hey man, ProWrestlingTees.com/Steve Austin has all my Broken Skull Ranch shirts, and you can check them out at ProWrestlingTees.com. The best damn IPA on the planet is Broken Skull IPA from El Segundo Brewing Company. You can find Broken Skull IPA at Whole Foods and Total Wines if you live in Cali. If you don't live here, check out InsideTheCellar.com and see if they ship to your state. And if you're looking for a badass pocket knife, check out the Cold Steel Broken Skull knife or the Cold Steel Working Man's knife, and you can get them at my new Amazon store. Amazon has the best price on both knives. Just go to Amazon.com/shop/Steve Austin. And I am on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Steve Austin BSR. I want to say one more thank you to all the fine sponsors of the Steve Austin Show, especially DDP Yoga, ADT, TrueCar, Geico, TheraWorks, and the WWE Network. That's how I'm able to do this podcast for you twice a week for free. Please support them because they support us. You can find all my sponsors at PodcastOne.com under the Killer Deals button at the top of the page. Folks, until next time, my name is Steve Austin. I'll catch your ass down the road.
This has been a Podcast One production. Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.
Did you know that 66% of men start to lose their hair by the time they're 35? It happens so fast you barely have time to notice. Well, listen up. Baldness can be optional, and Hims is here to help. Hims is a wellness brand for the modern man. A one-stop shop for hair loss, skin care, and sexual wellness, making men's personal care trusted, easy, and affordable. Hims offers FDA-approved, medical-grade products shipped directly to your door. No pharmacy lines or doctor visits. Sound treatment and prevention backed by medicine and science. Look better, feel better, do better with Hims. So save some money and save your damn hair. Go to 4hims.com/unleashed to get yourself a trial month of hair loss prevention products for just $5.
Primary vote roundups. I'm Jackie Quinn with an AP News Minute. In South Carolina, State Representative James Smith, a veteran, wins the Democratic nomination for governor. He will face incumbent Republican Henry McMaster in November. 5 states held primary races. President Trump says there's a new future for North Korea if it goes forward with complete denuclearization. CSIS Korea expert Victor Cha says it looks like things went well in Singapore.
If the bar for success in this summit is war or peace, it's a pretty low bar. We got peace.
The American Medical Association's calling for a ban on assault weapons, the doctors group weighing in on the nation's gun violence. There were frantic efforts to save Bodie Miller's young daughter who drowned in Los Angeles this weekend. Here's the 911 call.
Tilt her head back and open her airway and see if she's breathing.
Head back, head back.
How long was she in the pool?
We don't know.
I'm Jackie Quinn.